mi celular? ¿Dónde lo aventé? La costumbre que lo agarro y lo aviento. Listo. Quédate. ¿Se escucha? ¿Se escucha? Sí, se escucha. Perfecto. Ya puedo sentarme a jugar un ratito. A seguir pasando la historia. Bueno, los finales. Vámonos.
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. And he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone.
It would whisper promises in his ear, offer him power for blood. But this time, Renato was sure he could master it.
And so, Bernardo went ostrich hunting.
Da 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 da.
Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away.
Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? What was he doing here? Last time, the stone had fought him for possession of his own soul. Burned fur. The ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late.
Sorry, basta.
How could you convince a firewall you were its friend?
Ay. Ay, sorry, loca. Vale, perdón esto. Quiero jugar con el mouse.
There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Renato was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. This wasn't actually such a hard puzzle, come to think of it.
It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once.
And he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him.
Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "Go to the core," said the stone anxiously.
But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. The gem could give great power, but it was evil. But Renato had a plan. He would divide the stone into the power half and the evil half. He sought out the sage Calaveras.
"Oh, you need a mirror of splitting."
Croaked Calaveras.
"I can make one."
Calaveras set up various shiny things. And soon Renato was setting the stone down in the middle of Calaveras' lab. There was a flash, and now Renato was looking at himself. Except with a mustache, and a goatee and darker hair. There were two Iblis stones. One light, and one dark. Renato took the light one. He felt a rush of great power. Now I could defeat the Emperor. Wait a minute. Unfortunately, he couldn't think of any way to use it without hurting someone. That wouldn't be nice. "Give me that," said his evil-looking twin. And he drew his sword. He only got it halfway out of the scabbard when he fainted from the effort. Obviously, neither weak, evil Renato nor powerful, nice Renato was any threat to the Empire. After the Emperor's victory, they were exhibited in a museum until time ended, which was soon after. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it.
Ay, me morí. Fuck you. No me había olvidado. Pensé que vimos la lección.
Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away.
Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Renato was remembering all his old tricks, and some new ones. Now, he really ought to ask for a raise. Once, Renato had opened a chest, and a jack-in-the-box jumped out. Jack-in-the-boxes, they gave him the Wiggins. The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. Not the core, said the stone anxiously. But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it.
Esta me mata, así que...
Why was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies.
Pararara.
As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods before the transcendent emperor? Was it the future? Feed the souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls. Its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting.
The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he?
The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Renato. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him.
Had that door been opened before? He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. Kill her, whispered the stone. You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please. No, said Zenobia. Not that way. Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? Renato hesitated. Zenobia was his greatest enemy. She was the Emperor's daughter and his greatest general, and the single person Renato least wanted to remove from this world, especially that way. She was holding her arms out before her, hands fluttering, fending him off with hopeless urgency. Nope, she was weaving a spell. He couldn't move.
This thing is evil, she said. She slid the Iblistone out of its slot in his gauntlet and slipped it into a bag. Maybe we can learn from it.
She eyed him with a strange, wry, apologetic look. I missed you too. And before he could move again, she was gone. Learn from the Iblis stone? What did that mean? Would she take it to the palace or to the observatory on the Nexus? If she thought it was evil, she wouldn't want it in the palace.
And, after all, it was evil, wasn't it?
Maybe I can outrace her to the observatory, thought Renato. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. Renato felt a little sick. Ever since Zenobia had taken the stone from him, he'd felt an ache that wouldn't go away. He missed it. He wanted it back. He needed it back. Why hadn't he killed her when he had the chance? She was the enemy. He hadn't even seen her in 14 years. Why had he hesitated? You were a sucker for an empowered woman. Renato kicked himself. Don't make that mistake again. Zenobia thought the stone was evil. Was it?
Well, yes, but he still longed to have it back.
He'd felt so good killing ravens with it, and yet he'd felt unclean ever since he'd touched it. She confused him. She'd made him want to be a better fox, and then she'd abandoned him, never telling him she was the Emperor's daughter, never contacting him since. Well, who was she to tell him the stone was evil?
Interrupted story time. Caught the lead raven. Now we'll never find out how it ended.
The scientist's toes were pointing arcane instruments at the stone and looking at it through prisms and reflections.
Mine, said Renato as he took back the stone.
Well, we need it for science, croaked the toads. So he killed them. He felt better immediately. Smarter, too. I thought you'd never come for me, whispered the stone.
Then, a far-speaker toad croaked in something like Zenobia's voice.
Renato, leave the stone with the toads. It will swallow your soul. You'll kill everyone you love.
That did seem vaguely familiar, but Renato had an army to lead. An empire to bring down.
I know you can fight this thing.
Zenobia continued in the far speaker's croak.
You let me live. You know how evil it is. It will destroy you, Leonardo. It will destroy everything you love.
He had tried to convince himself that this time he would control the Iblis Stone. But he could feel his will becoming brittle.
She was right. He would get rid of it. Right? Now. Or now. He didn't really want to. I know. I'll go to the mountains, Renato thought. I'll find the strength to do it in the peace and quiet there.
Ok, dámosle pues. Tiraremos flores en vez de espacios para la gente.
As the Farfarer landed at the foot of the mountains, Renato was surprised to find Lapino there. What are you doing here?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I was stowed away on an Imperial courier ship, dressed up as a combat nurse carrying a general's beak transplant.
This is not a great time, said Renato, who was pretty sure he did not, in fact, believe Lapino's story.
That's when you need your friends,
said Lapino. I just need some peace and quiet, said Renato, and grimly set out on the path.
Adiós, Lapino. ¿Qué onda, Luis? ¿Cómo andas? ¿Ya andas cargando LOL o ya armaste tu equipo de Clash?
Renato told his friend how he had slaughtered the toads and how he had nearly slain Zenobia.
Ba-da-da-da-da-dum. Ba-da-da-dum.
Oddly, the sword wasn't whispering at him to kill Lapino.
Up ahead in the mountains, there was a peaceful spot. If he could rid himself of his burden anywhere, it was there.
Mira.
Everybody who wants to die, raise your weapon. All right. Open, says me. Renato thought it would make a difference, snatching the Iblastone before the Emperor could get it. It would destroy him. Zenobia and Lapino, they were both trying to save him. Peace. That was what he needed. So much for peace and quiet. There was Lapino. Again.
You're stronger than some dumb rock, Lapino said. Let's just bury it, and no one will ever find it again.
Renato could feel the spirit energy of all those dead ravens inside him, pecking away. The rabbit was right. Even if the rabbit was a traitor, he was still right. He tore the Iblastone from his gauntlet and threw it into the hole Lapino had dug. Stone was silent, probably sulking.
Now whoop those Imperials, said Lapino.
Are you coming?
Ah, no, I can't come with you. It's my old injury, you know. Recently, it's been acting up terrible. I'd be no use to you at all.
So Renato boarded the Farfarer alone. Renato felt lonely on board the Farfarer. How could his old friend Lapino, miraculously escaped from the Empire, leave him to face the final battle alone? Well, he'd abandoned Lapino before, hadn't he? It was only fair. And of course he felt lonely. He'd given up the Iblastone and all the souls he fed it. Of course he felt alone. But he had done the right thing. It had been hard to do, but there was no better feeling than that. Zenobia would be so proud of him.
No, todavía no. Pero aquí ya no me dan elecciones. ¿Qué loco? ¡Así no se puede! No, no me digas que se trabó, no. Vamos a darle un minuto y si no tengo que volver a hacer esa pinche línea. ¡Ah! Fuck my life. Vamos, no me quedes mal. No me quedes mal. No, ya no agarró. No me... F. No puedo creer que se haya trabado. Ah. ¡Ah! ¿En serio voy a tener que reiniciar la máquina por esta mierda? No me la creo, no me la creo. Ay, gracias por fin. Puta mierda, no puedo creer que esa madre se me haya bugueado. No. Fuck the system. Maldita sea. Qué mal pedo, la neta. Qué pinche mal pedo. Pam param pam param pam 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 param pam 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 pam. ¿Por qué? ¿Qué camino había tomado ahora? No me acuerdo.
As he reached the secret entrance, he was shocked to see Zenobia talking with the council. She bore a white flag. The council has betrayed you, whispered the stone.
Kill them!
What are you doing here, love? Bernardo demanded. Come for the brown muffins?
She's worried about you,
Croaked the council speaker.
we all are.
You're not yourself, Zenobia said. Before they could get into the rest of the intervention, he leapt at her. Unfortunately, the council speaker blocked him, so he slew her and the other council members. I'm not giving up, cried Zenobia as she darted off into the ruins. I think I just killed the entire rebel council, said Renato.
See how much power they've given you.
But they were on my side, weren't they?
No one is on your side, except for me.
He set sail for the fleet. There, at least, there would be enemies to kill.
¿Qué final es ese? Si se supone que en el que estaba haciendo hace ratito había dejado la piedra. No tiene mucho sentido. Pero no. Tengo que hacerlo ahorita. Maldita sea. Maldita sea. Maldita sea. No te trabes. Te vuelves a trabar, ya mejor me voy a jugar otra cosa. Estando haciendo tiempo en lo que ellos se ocupan para jugar de un estorbo. Así que... Serenity and Patience. Serenity and Patience. ¿Ya tengo que jugar?
The battle, alas, was not going well. He no longer had the stone, and he'd never gotten the core. Lapino wasn't with him, and he was up against Zenobia, out there somewhere, maneuvering the Emperor's forces. The rebels had been outnumbered from the start, and he still had that aching longing for the stone. But that is what it means to be a hero. He would fight his way to Zenobia. He would show her what he was capable of. Just him, with no diabolic accoutrements. He would win, no matter the odds.
A portal that led right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense. Okay, let's make this quick. I'm on my break in literally 2 minutes.
Yes, that was it. Pirouette, slash, parry, dodge. Renato had never done such good work in a fight. He wished the poets were along to sing of his exploits for his old age. Maybe he wouldn't have to kill Zenobia. Maybe he could defeat her and take her prisoner. Then he could turn the tide against the Emperor. If she wasn't crowned princess, once this was all over, she'd have more time for him, right?
Ah, nada, levantándome.
A la bestia, güey. Yo estoy despierto desde como las 7, 6.
A la verga, güey. Pues tienes que dormir, güey.
El problema es que estoy bien acostumbrado ya a dormir poco. Ese es el problema. Ya me quedé dañado de la universidad. Por cierto, ya te mandé la invitación para el Clash.
Déjame la
en la mañana.
Déjame abrir esto.
¿Sacaste tu ticket gratis?
No. A ver, dice.
Tienes que entrar a la página de Lola Noticias y donde salga algo lo de Clash, te paré como una página de Scroll. Que vas completando los casos y cuando lo terminas todo te da un boleto
Soon
gratis.
he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the
¿Cómo que
Emperor...
confirmar por SMS, güey?
Now it was coming for
Para
him.
evitar Smurfing.
De lanza.
There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there?
Personalmente a mí me da igual.
No vamos a pasar ni de la primera ronda.
Al menos los torneos que yo he jugado sí pasa la primera ronda de perdida. Después de eso ya es mucho pedo.
By some miracle, Renato fought his way to the Emperor's ship. He was exhausted, bleeding, but he'd found the strength to
Pero no me llega nada, güey. ¿Te tardó mucho en llegar o qué?
Zenobia came out of the ship.
¿Qué cosa?
Renato!
¿El mensaje?
She shouted, and then she fell down and died.
30 segundos.
Lapino was behind her,
40 lo mucho.
wielding a sword that seemed to suck
Pero
all
mucho
the
ya.
light out of the sun. You
¿Lo
idiot!
pusiste con la helada?
You threw the stone away!
Sí, güey.
Cried Lapino. You said it was evil.
Qué raro.
It hates sanctimonious prigs like you, laughed Lapino. And we're having a grand old time. Renato turned and ran. But no matter where he ran, Lapino jumped in front of him until Renato was cornered. That boy could hop.
Oh,
You
no,
wouldn't do
no,
this to an old
no.
friend, would you? Cried
No me
Renato.
puedes
Give me
dejar.
this, said Lapino, as he slid the sword into Renato's guts. Damn it! Again?
Así es. A ver. Déjame, reviso el LOL. Ah, sí, ya estás. Pinches perros locos. Entonces, ¿Qué pedo? Está pasando gente. Chingado, me bajaste el nivel, güey.
¿Qué dices, loco? ¿Cuánto tenías?
No, me refiero a que según yo esto, yo soy, si le picas al cuadrito donde dice el team y el nivel, yo soy nivel 2 y tú eres nivel 3 y el team se hizo nivel 3. Chingado, güey, lo bajaste. Te pasaste.
¿Por qué,
Te
güey?
pasaste de noob. Ah, es que lo dividen por elo, por divisiones.
Que verga, el Aldo nos va a bajar a level 10, güey. ¿Cuántos somos?
Creo que es del 1 al 3. Creo. El 1 vendrían siendo los diamantes. No, tal vez los masters. Los master y los challengers. Supongo que el tier 2 es diamante platino. Y oro para abajo es 3. Creo yo. Por lo menos es lo que pienso.
Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow.
Al rato voy a estar activo para ver si conectan todos, para ver cómo chingados va a estar eso del equipo, cuándo se pide la partida, cuánto tiempo te dan y todo eso.
Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble given time, but he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy, and that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him,
No, güey. Y lo volvió a mandar y me dijo que esperara 30 segundos.
winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway.
Tal vez Rito no te quiere, güey. Dijo, no, este güey no vale. A la fregada contigo.
Tal vez los domingos no trabajan, güey.
Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But
Oh, fuck.
where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Renato had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the Ravens caw about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice.
No, te juro que no me llega.
There was still no sign of Lapino. Not a hair, not a pellet. Was he hiding in the cemetery further down the road? That didn't seem like him. Lapino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lapino do if he knew that Lapino was going to betray him? Well,
He concocted a crazy scheme, didn't he? That used Lapino's betrayal against him, and it would blow up in his face. Yeah. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would be a first.
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him.
On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lapino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper. He was excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy.
He
Te
sure
digo, güey.
Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, the scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right. Lapino was a traitor. But still, he was good company. Renato wondered if he could learn to cook this way. Probably not.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if he didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones. No healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lapino was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy. Like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides.
It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it.
He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost. The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato.
But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renato, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer dived towards the Nexus, Lupino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Renato said. Lupino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lupino leapt off the ship.
As Lupino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Renato vaguely remembered Lupino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Renato was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lupino would get it right. And if Renato could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in this sector. Right? Renato caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lupino. Of course he had to let Lupino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right? Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the far speaker toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lupino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lupino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their far speaker didn't croak back. Was the base under attack too? Who knew what was going on at the base? But he knew what the ravens would do to Lupino if Renato didn't rescue him fast.
Well, actually, he wasn't exactly sure. It kind of depended on whether Lupino was a traitor or not. Renato just couldn't bring himself to believe that.
What are old friends for, if not to need rescuing every few days? Renato felt a twinge of doubt. Should he have gone to the base? No. Logically, wherever they'd taken Lapino was probably where they took the core, right? Oh, why couldn't Lapino have just, for once, not got himself captured? Was that too much to ask? He shouldn't be too hard on him. No, he meant well, and he was insanely brave. I admire that. Holding Lapino anyway. There was no sign of him or the ravens who'd captured him. Just rocks and snow and the usual scouts. No sign of the core either. Was this a wild rabbit chase? Oh, trust Lapino to screw up even getting captured. But what is this rebellion for anyway? Oh, Lapino was a useless goof. But he was a friend. If friends didn't matter anymore, what was the point of winning this war?
¿Ya todavía no te llega el mensaje?
No, güey.
Claro, está descontinuado, ese ya no sirve.
Ya sé, güey.
What was the point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? Renato thought about the intel he'd gathered from the outpost. Who would he bring it to? Who even had time to read it?
At the end of the mountain path, Renato came to a clearing. There was a campfire, raven feathers, and... oh, Lapino's lucky deck of cards. Well, that wasn't good. Renato hoped Lapino had not tried to cheat his captors at cards. Ravens were much better than weasels at counting, and they had a very poor sense of humor.
Then, he saw what he had hoped never to see. Fresh scraps of rabbit fur. Ragged and bloody, ravens would eat anything.
By Grabthar's hammer! Renato screamed at the sky. I will avenge you!
The rebels had assembled their fleet. Ahead, the clouds were dark with Imperial ships. If he could reach the Emperor before the rest of the rebels did, maybe he could settle this without too much bloodshed. He set sail, and the Farfarer shot forward.
Poor Lapino had never been a great warrior. The mad rabbit was good for a lark and a laugh. And a pint. The thought of ravens eating him made Renato furious. The way they were eating up the land. The way the Emperor was eating up the people with his new, bloodthirsty ways. He would make them all pay.
Dice que los de AT&T no les llega el mensaje, güey.
¿En serio?
Sí.
¿A poco eres Mr. AT&T?
Sí, güey.
¿Está Finoli?
Pinche Telcel vale madre, güey.
¿Cómo que Telcel? Sí, es AT&T el que está fallando.
Pues sí, güey, pero pues aquí, pinche mierda, güey.
Bueno, pues yo nomás tengo el teléfono de adorno, así que para que me encuentren. ¿Qué te puedo decir? ¿Y no tiene tu jefa teléfono de Telcel para que le pidas nomás en la...
Sí, para que vergas que el rato que se vaya,
Nos vemos. Pues mándale un ticket a Rita a ver si hacen algo los cabrones. Porque si no, si son mamadas.
Good! I need a new rug for my nest, said the lead raven.
Igual creo que el torneo empieza el 25, así que tenemos chance de organizarnos. Así que mándale el ticket a Rito a ver si,
Every objective to
no
save
sé,
his
te lo
friend.
manda por correo u otra mamada, porque pues, si no está jodido.
Even Zenobia. He loved Lapino, he realized. And now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lapino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the Valiant. He would avenge him.
Rayos. Sorry, basta. Termino esta historia, corto el stream y reviso unas cosas que quiero checar de
Finally,
Ay,
he reached the Emperor's
yo
ship.
quiero seguir pasando.
And there was Lapino, surrounded by
Ya vi
ravens.
por qué ladró.
He was alive. They'd eaten some other rabbit. I'll save you! He shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. Oh, you shouldn't have, said Lapino when the last raven was down. Renato threw his arms around his best friend. I had to come. I love you, man. You really, really shouldn't have, said Lapino. And Renato felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lapino took the dagger out of Renato's back and wiped it off on Renato's sleeve. Why? You always have to be the hero. Brave Renato, epic Renato, super sexy Renato. And I'm sick of it.
As Renato died, all he could think was,
Damn it. Fooled again.
Ah, rayos. Bien, vamos a dejar ahorita aquí el stream. Vamos a darle material.